So is Mark Hamill officially done with Star Wars? That's what I want to talk about. So there's been a few videos that have come up recently of Mark Hamill talking about how he is basically done with the Star Wars franchise and his thoughts on it. So before getting into any of that, I just want to watch that clip real quick. Let's go ahead and watch it real quick. That way, and then we can discuss it afterwards.
You've said recently that you're done with Star Wars. Is that safe to say?
Well, I don't want to make a big pronouncement like this is my decision. I'm just saying that it really felt like a conclusion. My character was given complete closure. I died, ironically, by overdosing on the Force, I might point out. But, that seemed to be, and once the Skywalker trilogy was over, it was a whole new era for them. George gave them this amazing canvas, the entire galaxy. They can do westerns, mysteries, comedies, whodunits, anything within that realm of the Star Wars. Listen, I am so grateful to George for letting me be a part of that back in the days, the humble days when George called Star Wars the most expensive, low-budget movie ever made. We never expected it to become a permanent franchise and a part of pop culture like that. But my view is like, I had my time, I'm appreciative of that, but I really think they should, focus on the future and all the new characters.
So yeah, it seems as though Mark is, he feels like basically, I think that he's accomplished and filled the role of what he was supposed to in Star Wars. And in all honesty, it's actually quite humbling to see him be this way, of just knowing that he has put in the absolute best he could in Star Wars, and specifically the character of Luke Skywalker. Mark, along with other people like Anthony Daniels, C-3PO, they take it seriously. During the filming of the sequels, Mark, we saw all in the news and articles and stuff that he was, he had his opinion of where Luke's character was going, and he didn't necessarily agree with it. And a lot of the fans also agree with that. He's now at that point where he's like, it's time to look toward, like he said in the video, to look towards the future. The Skywalker story is complete, at least for the most part, at least for his role of it. And, it's time to start looking towards, other parts of the galaxy. And I think the Skywalker saga, it's definitely always going to be that origin point. Like, that's where it started. And it's definitely, it raised the bar high. Now we have obviously stuff with, some of the other trilogy or other series like The Mandalorian, and then, with the Rey character and Finn and Poe. And obviously they were, kind of mixed on that. There was, I don't want to totally bash on the newest trilogy, because there were some really awesome things in there that I loved, and obviously some stuff I really did not like. It can be done. It can be done. That's the thing. It has been done outside of the Skywalker saga. But I think it's interesting they talks about the future, because, we have some, announcements of Star Wars films, and some of them are going to be taking place way into the future, past the Skywalker, bloodline. Not to say that it might linger somewhere in the future, but I'm interested to see that. Like, I want to see a brand new era, 1,000 years or 500 years or whatever it is, past the Skywalker timeline, to see, what comes of it. And so Mark saying that is that I think that's the thing. Like, I think his actual role of Luke Skywalker is obviously done. His character died. There's really not much you can do. You could maybe talk, if he was to be in it, you could talk about the time between episode 6 and episode 7. I would say highly unlikely. Obviously we've seen some of that in comics and books, but as far as him himself, I don't see much of him coming back. The only thing I can somewhat see him coming back in, which a lot of us are thinking he might come back, is a Force ghost, in the new Rey film, if that even still is going on. I actually just saw that. I think that got, at least, I don't know if it was cut or pushed back. I'm not sure. Let me know in the comments, because actually I'm not fully up to date on the Rey film. But yeah, I could see him coming back as a Force ghost, at least in that. But as far as him himself, he's done 6 movies, so, and he's definitely put everything he could into for the character of Luke. Again, even though he didn't agree with where Luke's character was in the new trilogy, he still tried. Like, he put in the absolute most when he was talking to Ryan. He says, I will bring the best I can for this character of where you think it's going. He's like, I don't believe in your vision of him, but I mean, obviously you do, so I will put my best foot forward. And I think actually Mark Hamill in an article somewhere talked about how he didn't necessarily like that they killed off the basically entire original cast. I mean, obviously Chewie's still there, but Han, Leia, Admiral Akbar, Luke, like all these characters. And I think that's what a lot of people like myself did not like in that, is that, again, there definitely needs to be a transition. There needs to be the time of the Skywalkers, and then there needs to be the time of these new characters, 100%. But I guess it was just kind of this weird moment of, it's kind of like when a company buys a new company and they get rid of all the other staff and then bring in a whole new staff. Like, there's nothing wrong with bringing in new staff. It's like, but when you wipe out everybody originally, it's just like, it feels like you're discarding them, as in you're being very blunt that your time is over, your stories don't matter anymore, and we need to focus on these new guys. And maybe that's kind of what they thought. Maybe that's kind of what they felt. I'm not sure. It definitely kind of felt like a wiping slate of, some of those stories. Not to go too far off topic, but yeah, with Mark Hamill being that, this is basically the end of him and his character. It makes sense. Like, it's not surprising, basically, to me that he would say something like that. And again, I think it's extremely humbling that, he had, the glory days of, the original Star Wars. And I love that line about, he said it was the biggest budget of like a low budget movie, however he said it. Which brings to mind, if you have not seen the documentary on Disney Plus of Light and Magic, basically the story of Industrial Light Magic Studios, basically the studio that George Lucas put together for the special effects. Wow, like I said, I'm a big movie buff in that way, of just the behind the scenes, what it took for, again, special effects, the sound effects, all that stuff. If you haven't seen it, be sure to go watch it. And a thing that's kind of a vibe throughout that short documentary series is that even the people, not just the actors, not just the director and all that stuff, but even everybody behind the scenes, during the original filming of, the original trilogy of Star Wars, these are a bunch of people that had honestly no clue of what they were doing. They were creating something brand new, and there was no to-do list or like a checkmark list of like, all right, we need to do it this way. Or because, again, it's never been done before. So a lot of it was just tinkering and experimenting, and a lot of the struggles that came with that. So if you haven't seen that series, be sure to go watch it. And it's kind of the same, kind of the way Mark Hamill just explained it that way, that it was this low budget film that honestly hardly nobody believed in it. And George Lucas, if I remember right, at least for the first film, I think in all of them, but yeah, he made it with his own money. He had his own, he didn't go to other companies to, borrow money from them in order to film this, because, if you take money from them, then they have a say of how this movie gets done. And George didn't want that. He didn't want any restrictions, no lines of where he could or could not go. So he did it all himself. So in that documentary series, it goes into that, but it just made me call back, for what Mark said about being basically the biggest low budget movie. But let me know what you guys think. I mean, Mark, along with Harrison Ford and some of these other actors, I think after the sequels, I think it was fairly obvious, and that's what I'm saying, I'm not necessarily surprised. Like, I'm sure it was pretty much obvious that, yeah, pretty much all the characters died off, and there was really no room to fit them in for any type of new film, because you're ending it on a good note. That's the thing. You're ending it at a moment where, I think that's how Mark feels, is that he had his time. He had his moments in, the vast amount of what the Star Wars galaxy is. So honestly, when I saw this video of Mark Hamill talking about this, it wasn't sad to me. Not to say that I don't want to see more Luke Skywalker. I would like to see more of Luke's story, within, novels or comics or, or stuff like that. I would definitely want to see more of that, especially in the canon version. A huge chunk of, Luke Skywalker's life is 100% explained within the Legends end of Star Wars. And honestly, in my opinion, that's enough for me. I don't necessarily even need, I would obviously like to, but I don't need to necessarily see all of Luke Skywalker's story, expanded into novels and whatnot, but I'm obviously open to it. And I honestly think the biggest thing we need to take away, which is what Mark says towards the end, which is we need to look towards the future. There's nothing wrong with, nostalgia and going back and remembering and experiencing the characters, we've known and loved, through all the, again, whether it's the sequels or the original trilogy, stuff like that. But it's time to look towards the future, which honestly, this last Star Wars Celebration was on that. There was a lot of stories that are going to be taking place both hundreds of years in the future, but also like thousands of years in the past, which is the one I'm actually extremely excited for. It's definitely a sobering but happy moment to see this. And I'm just grateful too that last year, for a very brief moment, I actually got to meet Mark Hamill. It was very brief. It was at the Chicago Fan Expo. I got to see him there. And just a quick side note of that story. I would like to go in more detail into it, but I met him, and I didn't get a photo with him, but I did have him sign a lightsaber for me. What was interesting is because he had his own little private area, so they only allowed 5, 8 people in at a time to go through. And at this point, Mark has been signing autographs for 8 hours, so he's you can tell, because I'm in line and I'm going up to the table and I can see he's just exhausted. And everybody going up in line was basically not paying attention to him, really, or not acknowledging him, because they had posters, whatever it was, they had to get signed, and he had his assistants. They would take the items and take a pen, sign real quick, and then you'd be on your way. And I mean, yeah, for my opinion of going to these Comic-Con type things, is that you're paying for a photograph or you're paying for an autograph, which is again technically the transaction you're doing. But personally for me, it's just the fact that I get to meet this person. It was really short, but the thing was, everybody was going up and nobody said a word to him. That was the thing. Nobody said thank you. Nobody said hi or hey, love your character or love your work or nothing like that. They all handed in their item. He signed it and then they walked away. And again, technically I'm paying for an autograph. I just wanted to say something. And so I hand my item over to the assistant. He signs it and then he gives it back to me. And when I reach in to grab it, I actually leaned in just a little bit further and I said, "Hey, Mark, just want to say thank you. I appreciate it so much for, you coming out here, and just want to say thank you." It was real quick. And again, he had been signing for 8 hours. He looked just like a zombie. He was just exhausted. But when I told that to him, he actually looked up as if he had just had a coffee and just said, "Hey, thank you so much for coming out." Just like that. Talk about a pro. After 8 hours of signing autographs. Let me know what you guys think in the comments. What do you think about, Mark Hamill talking about basically his end of Star Wars being over? I'm sure that obviously correlates with a lot of other, people who, who've been in the original Star Wars projects. I think Star Wars is, as far as what it is, it's a great place to reminisce and a great place to see where it all started. But it is at that time in history where it also is time to move on to the new stuff. And I don't see it being completely, for example, Darth Vader is one of the most iconic characters ever. I don't think we're ever going to stop seeing, novels, comics, or maybe even a mini cartoon series or something like that of Darth Vader. He's always going to be around. So the Skywalker story is always going to linger. But what should be the focus? Should it be on the characters who have been basically developed for the last 40 years? Or should we start looking towards, some of the new stuff? So, or, putting the focus on that. So let me know what you guys think. I just thought this was an interesting topic to talk about, both of, kind of what he thought and what I thought. And also don't forget to be sure to check out the latest animations over at Larry the Stormtrooper. So I'll see you guys there.